Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this edition of the Share and Discuss webinar. We'll just allow for a few more seconds for everyone to join in and settle, and we will be right on our way. This session, as always, promises to be an amazing and insightful session. Of course, you can see our guest today is all dressed up, ready to share our experience and insights from delivering and supporting the uptake of practical STEM learning on the continent. So we look forward to sharing all that, of course, our experience, but also our insights with you. In a moment, while we wait, please feel free to write in the chat, as it's our custom, where you're joining us from, your name, as well as perhaps the subject that you teach or you're affiliated with. If you like physics, chemistry, or math, just your name, your country, and then the subject of school that you're affiliated with. I'll share my screen and we will be right on our way. There you go. Hey, great. Welcome again. Thanks for joining the April edition of the PhET Africa Share and Discuss webinar series. My name is Shola Olateju, and I'm excited to have you join us today. Today, we have an interesting conversation, and we can't wait to bring that to you. But before then, we'll just do some housekeeping rule, after which we will introduce our guest for today. The PhET Interactive Simulation Project at the University of Colorado Boulder creates free interactive math and science simulation. The SIMs are based on extensive education research and engage students through an intuitive game-like environment where students learn through exploration and discovery. The project was founded in 2002 by a Nobel laureate, Carl Wyman. At the PhET Interactive Simulation Project, the goal is to improve the global math and science teaching and learning by making the teaching and learning of science more like, making learning science more like doing science. In line with this goal, one of the many initiatives is this webinar, where we bring seasoned researchers and practitioners with extensive work within that sphere to share their insights so that we can distill or shift practices, like we call it, learn from their experience, and then improve our craft and how we teach and support students in our classroom. They share evidence-based strategy to support the effective use of PhET, as well as the teaching of maths and science on the continent. This webinar holds every third Wednesday of the month for those joining us for the first time. Hold every first Wednesday third Wednesday of the month, and this is what the breakdown looks like in the country that you're joining us from. The session is recorded so that people who are unable to join us live are able to, of course, asynchronously connect and then continue the conversation. So we invite you, if, of course, you've missed previous sessions as well, you can also catch up with past recordings and from all of the amazing speakers and conversations that have held in the past. So just head over to YouTube and then search for PhET Interactive Sims, and you'll then find the playlist Share and Discuss webinar. And just a few more housekeeping rules. The session, while the session is on, there will be no questions. So we've saved sufficient time after our speaker makes a presentation to take questions towards the end of the meeting. So I advise that you please take note of the questions. Please don't wait till the end when we open the room for questions. So once you see a need for a question, I advise that you just pen that down so that once we get to that session, we'll take all of the questions. And yeah, we'll try as much as possible to wrap that up, or just take it to the community on Facebook, where we also, of course, attend and support questions that come through. For those joining us on Facebook, please feel free to drop that in the chat, and a member of the team will be paying attention to that. On that note, I'm happy to invite everyone Of course, these conversations are usually short. It's an hour, but we often find it's almost impossible to say all that we would love to say. So we invite you to join the community for PhET teachers on Facebook, where you can get all the support, connect with past speakers or current speakers who are in the group, ask questions and get the support you need. You can also find other super users within your region or country that, of course, can help your journey in using and adopting PhET in your classroom. Without further ado, and of course, not holding your breath any further, I have the honor of introducing our guest for today. You see that she's dressed for the occasion. Her name is Professor TJ, and of course, she's going to tell you a bit about herself in a bit. Tracey, as of course, which is her name, is the co-founder of Funke Science, a platform that promotes interactive science learning among school children through fun activities, experiments, and then tutorials using simple and common household materials that they can identify. She's of the opinion that teaching children the value of science in their daily lives, that children should be taught the value of science in their daily lives, and of course, that science is manageable, easy, and fun when they interact with it. She's passionate about getting students to interact, especially girls, and she believes that if we continue to teach, just like John Dewey said, if we continue to teach students the way we taught them yesterday, we'll rob them of the future that lies ahead. I will, of course, love to just hand the mic over now so that we don't take further time. It's a pleasure to have you on the call on this edition of the Share and Discuss webinar, and we look forward to your presentation. I'll stop sharing so that you can share it.
Thank you so much, Shola. Whenever anyone introduces me, sometimes I wonder if they're talking about me or it is somebody else. So it's always humbling to speak about some of the work that I have done. Hello, everybody. My name is Tracey Shiundu, but also so fondly known to the children who I work with as Professor TJ. I've been doing science experiments and STEM things, I think, since I was a very young girl. So I've always loved science. And this whole drive to want to teach the next generation of African scientists came from just my interaction with my classmates at the University of Nairobi. And just a brief about me, I did industrial chemistry. So it was just fun blowing up things and just seeing how they interact with each other. But we realized that, we need to speak to other people, the younger generation. So that's how Funky Science was born, and it was born to make science more practical. And I'm happy to give this presentation so I could quickly jump in, because I know our time is, we don't have a lot of time, but we have a lot of things to discuss, and they all impact the continent one way or the other. So the main topic around what I'm going to talk about today, evening, nighttime, whatever time it is, wherever you are, is about making STEM learning accessible for all. And especially in our continent, around where STEM learning is not very equal, and how we could try and make it equal as Funky Science. So just briefly about Funky Science and our mission, approach, and just about our values is that we want to improve learning outcomes in STEM. We want to use localized content to do this. And we also want to do kinesthetic learning for the children, because this improves in their cognitive development and cognitive understanding for our teaching practices and our teaching methodology. Then lastly, our vision as Funky Science is to foster the next generation of African scientists. We need these scientists to innovate for us and to create solutions that are for Africa and that will actually move Africa to a technological state. These are the scientists who will spearhead all sorts of technological development. And, this next generation are the ones who are going to move us to the next level. So as Funky Science, then we feel that it is very necessary for children, and not just children, but anyone who's learning STEM, to do hands-on learning. And the core concept behind this is we link this hands-on learning with real-world concepts. So if you see from one of the experiments that I'll do, it'll be linked towards something that's actually happening globally that we need to pay attention to. So it's bringing those interactive activities to show how they link with what happens in the real world. The other thing is backing around research. So presenting studies that support effective learning, and actually even for us, experimenting and testing some of these learning theories, so that as we teach this next generation of children, we are also asking ourselves, are they learning something? Is whatever I am teaching them creating an impact? And can this child actually use it for something else? And lastly, also, of course, impactful examples. So using regular materials and everyday materials that we have to demonstrate physics, chemistry, and biology concepts. Because anyway, this is what we're trying to teach science to the children. So if we can break it down using concepts that they're familiar with, then we have taught them something new. The other thing that we've done around teaching STEM is also now overcoming some of the challenges that are within education. So we've found that there's a significant problem for children to grapple different concepts in maths and in science. And for us, our solution is just making it fun, making it relevant, and aligning to the curriculum of the country that we're using or of the curriculum of the students, what they're learning. And why is this? Because we found that lots of students actually fail in STEM courses, so that's in maths and science. And then a lot of students also don't understand, or they feel that science is either difficult or it's magic. So those are some of the things that as Funky Science we break down for the children, show it in simple ways, and just have simple experiments. As you can see in the picture there, it's air pressure being shown with a card, a paper card, water, a glass, and simple experiment to show the children just a concept that happens almost every day. So we empower through STEM, where we teach lifelong learning through stepwise models. So which means that we break down different concepts so that it is easier for the child to sort of quote unquote digest. So we teach children easier ways to understand different concepts. We also teach them certain skills like problem solving and confidence, team building as well, because as we give them a problem, they're doing it together. So as you're doing this problem and finding a solution together, then you're working on it as a team. And that's one thing that we need to make sure they foster themselves, because at the end of the day, even for us to achieve different goals, we need to collaborate and work together. So a lot of our STEM activities are linked towards that, so that even the children are teaching each other and explaining to each other these different concepts. They're also trying to show each other how they work and even switching it up, even asking questions. If I change this parameter in the experiment, what do you think will happen? And even it helps the children now think on their feet, come up with different solutions, come up with even different experiments as we're doing it. And that's some of the things that we want to empower this next generation. We're also breaking gender barriers by encouraging more girls to get into STEM. So we're actually even teaching primarily some classes where we're pushing for girls to come in as the leaders within their groups to teach others about STEM. And we found it increases, again, their confidence levels, because you'll find in scenarios where normally STEM is not shown as it's primarily for girls or it's a girl sort of field. But for us, we're trying to show them that just by looking at somebody like me who has done a STEM course and coming back to teach you, that it means that you can actually learn this by seeing someone familiar doing that. And we're trying to push for that same familiarity, to push for more gender equality within the STEM field, so that everybody has an equal representation as we move through. Our experiments are also very engaging. As you can see, it's an explosive outtake from some of our classes where the kids enjoy seeing some of these experiments explode, become messy, and just speaking in their quote unquote language, because mess and when it's in explosions, it looks very nice for them, and they enjoy a lot of those things. And these experiments encourage the children to interact with different things and participate actively in a lot of our content and in a lot of our experiments, so that we also use these experiments to demonstrate how science happens in our daily lives. Just by something small like this experiment of soda and Mentos, you can actually show them how geysers work, how volcanoes work, and those sort of explosions now is what the child will want to further pursue and further continue wanting to understand. Okay, so if I've seen this explosion, how next and what next happens, so that I can continue learning more and more about this. And even from some of these work, we've also learned that whatever we're doing as Funky Science, we're trying to also bridge a gap, an educational gap. So this is also helping Africa achieve Agenda 2063, which STEM is a pivotal role in this. As I mentioned, we need to move Africa to a technological state. And we need to create our own African scientists who can actually create our own African solutions. We need to push for our own solutions that will actually help us move from one level to the next. And we as Funke Science are actually trying to contribute to that future by encouraging the young learners who pass through our system to actually think critically and also be able to come up with different solutions for different problems that we have, just by doing a few simple experiments that we normally have. So, and the other thing that we're doing is also heavily engaging with the PhET community, where we have shared goals around how we teaching these kids, and we are also linking towards the same thing, because we know that STEM is not taught effectively, and it's not taught even as openly as we'd want it to be taught. But now, as we work together with the different PhET simulations, as I'll show you now, is that we're trying to use some of these simulations within the classroom to also show our learners the practicality of science. And I think that's the major thing that we're normally having, because we need to always have it in check that things are moving in the right direction, that people are knowing what they're supposed to learn at a specific time, and for them to know what exactly is supposed to be happening. So we try as much as possible that when we're doing our experiments also, we're showing them a live simulation at the specific time and at the specific learning location that they're the learning outcome that they're supposed to be having. I think even at this point, I'll also touch on the Kenyan curriculum and where we're doing CBC learning. So at this time, the CBC learning is geared towards practical learning and practical teaching of our students. So if we're teaching them practically, then we're using some of the tools, not just as Funke Science and some of the science STEM tools that we have, but we're also encompassing this together with what we've learned from some of the PhET simulations that we've seen, and how else to also incorporate them in our learning and also with the learning for the children that we have. So at this point, I'd link it to one of the experiments that we actually did. And this is linked to also one of the PhET simulations. So from what I've seen from some of the PhET simulations that we've worked with, they have different sort of topics that they're teaching on within chemistry, bio, and physics. So I decided we're going to touch on one of the experiments that we do at Funke Science, which is a balloon sufuria. So a sufuria simply is a Kiswahili word for a pot or a cooking utensil that you would use. And for us, this experiment, we take the children through showing them different effects of global warming. And we saw it, different effects of even the sun on water bodies and that sort of thing. So what we've done we saw that it also links with, to some extent, teaching the children around greenhouse gases. And we also have an experiment around that. And if you have time and you're able to look through that simulation, it shows how at every level, if there's a covering of some sort, so of course, a layer of methane or carbon dioxide, it creates a sort of heat value as it keeps covering and covering on every single level. And that shows that the temperature is increasing because of this, let's say layer, quote unquote, but it's actually a layer of greenhouse gases that's actually covering up and actually increasing the temperature on the Earth. But for us in our experiment now, it also shows quite similar, but it also shows around preservation of our water bodies. So let me, at this point, actually take you through the experiment. And this is a very simple experiment. So I have my material here with me. Shola, it's good for me to go?
Yes, go for it.
All right, cool. So for this experiment, I'll need water, which is here, a jug of water. And then simple things that we use with our children, which is here, balloons. So I have quite a number of colors of balloons, but I'll pick purple. And then simply I'll use a plate so that just in case anything messy happens, then it'll happen. Then I have a candle as my source of heat. And then also a funnel. So this funnel is basically for directing the water inside. So, and a source of the matches. So what I'll proceed to do is light First, I need to, of course, stick the candle to the plate so that it doesn't fall. And these are some of the things that we do. So let me just light my candle. I'm hoping that, now it's not my face that needs to be seen much. It's more of the experiment. Then I'll pick my balloon, and then using my funnel, I'll pour water into the balloon. Then carefully move the balloon. Perfect. Being careful not to mess with the computer. Then I'll blow the balloon. So as you can see, and the balloon has the water inside. Then I will tie my balloon, and then I'll take some tissue to make sure that there is no water anywhere on the balloon. On the outside, otherwise the balloon will burst. Then if I'm to place the balloon over, the balloon is not bursting. It's not magic, it's actually science that's happening. And if you can see clearly, let me just move it, the balloon doesn't burst. Here. So there's actually soot that forms on the balloon. And why this is happening, this is an experiment now to show around climate change and why we need to preserve our water bodies and how heat can actually affect that. So what happens is my candle now, we deal with it as the sun. And then this balloon is the earth. And then the water inside is our water bodies. So what happens is that the heat from the balloon, the heat from the candle will first heat the space that has the water. And then up until the point that the water boils, then the balloon will burst. So that means I have to really hold the balloon over the flame for a long time until it actually now pops and bursts. But in the event that now, if I was to physically do this with an empty balloon, I hope there's nobody who's scared of pops. And it'll be quite a loud pop, so just bear with me. So if I was to place this over, and I'm also scared of this, but so the balloon would pop. And in such a scenario, that's what would happen to the earth and to us if we're not able to conserve our water bodies and to deal with that excessive heat that comes. So that excessive heat now is what actually pops the balloon. But in our case where there's the water, and when we take care of our water bodies on earth, then we're able to regulate the temperature of the earth, and then we're not going to pop or burn like the balloon. So that's my little experiment. You can actually test it out. We've tested it out with other fluids, not just water, but you can test it out with milk. If you're feeling adventurous, you can test it out with petroleum, but we don't advise for that. But it's safer, always try it with milk and with water. As long as there's a fluid within the balloon, then it'll absorb the heat. But that's some of the things that we've done. And we can actually link some of these experiments and play around. Like, for example, now with the greenhouse gas emissions, now it actually shows the greenhouse gas holding on and then increasing the temperature, reducing. So you see, with that experiment, you can actually show them as the temperature increases, well, you're going to burn up, burn up, burn up, burn up, and then at some point, pop. So it's an interesting way and a different way because it also brings in the aspect of play and the aspect also of familiarity, because which child doesn't like balloons? Not popping, but which child doesn't like playing around with balloons more often than not? So for us as Funky Science, our call to you as educators, our call to you as people who are dealing with the learners, we invite you to collaborate with us and to work with some of the things that we're doing, where we're using incorporating PhET simulations in some of our teaching, and even training our Funke facilitators, as we call them, on some of our methods, and then incorporating some of these PhET simulations, because there's one thing when they're able to also physically play with the material that we're giving, and there's another thing also playing with a simulation and changing some of the variables inside. Because as you can see with my balloon, I can only blow it as big as possible and it plays around. But with some of the simulations that are there for PhET, you can play around with different parameters, switch up the temperature, add 3 layers of greenhouse gases and see what happens to the temperature, how it increases and decreases. But for me here, with the flame, I can only show as much and then add on something else that I have also added from the PhET simulation. So as I close, I'd want to show you some of the experiments that we have done and some of the sessions that we've carried out in different areas, just doing different science experiments with children across the country. These are just students that we worked with in Kenya. We've also done online, but online was a lot more different and more live sessions with some of these children that we've been working with. So finally, I'd like you to join me as well in inspiring the next generation of African scientists, and as well as thanking you for actually listening to me and watching my little magic show. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor TJ. I promised it was going to be a fun session earlier on. Yeah, very engaging and insightful experiment. And I really did enjoy how you were, it did come as a surprise, I think, and that's what the kids will find interesting. Like, they would have considered balloons as fun, and then being able to relate that to the water body and earth basically just helps depict clearly a lot of the things. But most importantly for us as educators, a lot of the materials we find ourselves can't become magic if we just understand how to leverage and make the most of them alongside simulations to ensure that students learn as in STEM the effective way. Teaching the traditional way, teaching STEM the traditional way won't be different from teaching history. Learning STEM has to be practical and hands-on. And of course, Funke Science is doing so much amazing work in that regard. So this is a great time to drop your questions in the chat. We will open up the floor now to take all of the questions. And yeah, a couple of them have dropped already. I'll get to that. But yeah, there are lots of thank you. Very interesting. I love your example. Simple, but very elaborate and relevant. I love the experiment. Great experiment. It's wonderful to see specific bodies. So amazing, fantastic. So amazing feedback from those. So just imagine sitting with Professor TJ for like 3 hours. Like, yes, she might be blowing our heads then, not the balloons. Yeah, but yeah, and science should be fun. It should not be. Students should not feel tortured when they learn science. Thanks again for joining today and for taking us through that experiment. I'll come to the questions again. Use the question and answer feature to drop your questions, and I'll be reading them out to Professor TJ. Someone already dropped the question. I'll just start with that, then I'll come back to the other questions as they arrive. The first question, and I won't be surprised if this is not the first hearing that, is what is funky? What does funky mean? Is that let me read in. So I'm referring. So what does funky mean? Like funky science. So FUNKE. Where did it come from? What's the inspiration for framing the name of what you do?
Good question. And I'm happy also I think my co-founder is also on the call as well. So if I say the story wrong, he will verify. But so fun, it's fun KE. So it's fun then KE with a twist around Kenya. So we're linking it as fun science made by Kenyan scientists. So it's from Kenya to the whole world, so that at least, even we can create something that comes up. So it was wordplay. So instead of saying funky with a Y, we decided it can be, because sometimes also some people say funke. So we're like, okay, but it's actually funky science. So it's the wordplay around it. A lot of people start with calling it first fun KE, but we want to emphasize it's fun science created by Kenyan scientists from Kenya to the world.
Okay, great. Thank you. And So my question is tied to where it started from, and of course,
Yes.
how that applies to us as teachers. I'm sure, of course, perhaps it might have come from some frustrations or the gaps you see in how science is being taught, the limited or not well-equipped laboratories that we often find in most schools on the continent. So where did this journey start from you, for you? And what's the big vision, and what do you advise if of course we have amazing educators in the room at the moment? How do we overcome this now established mindset where we as in often just look at the challenge of little or no lab and we default to just teaching the wrong way? How do we start seeing beyond this initial barrier to then, of course, exploring all of the new tools and options that are available to us to effectively teach STEM on the continent?
Okay. So from the genesis of Funky Science, I think I mentioned it briefly in my beginning introduction, but it stemmed from when I was in university. So when you get to University of Nairobi, you're all immersed into lab classes where you must do the lab procedures and you must follow the procedure, and you're interacting with a lab setting and a lab environment. And for some people, it was very intimidating. So when I questioned some of my classmates trying to find out, okay, how come we did all this in high school? We learned about it. But what I learned was we all were supposed to learn about it, but not everybody learned about lab safety, working in the lab, actually interacting with lab apparatus and that sort of thing. And then I came to realize that a lot of them didn't have that confidence to do the science experiments. So that sort of lack of confidence to want to actually do the experiments, to want to interact with the lab equipment became they were scared of doing it. So a lot of times it was either I was the team lead and I had to do some of these experiments because I felt I understand what's going on. But in actual sense, I was just doing trial and error like a real scientist. But I saw that a lot of them were not very confident. So even when I spoke with my co-founder, he said, yeah, in my class also, it's almost the same. We'd get into doing maybe a physics practical and some of the students are not confident to do with it. So what I realized is in the Kenyan curriculum, before they sit for their last exam, which is in like Form 4, so I'd call it like maybe a grade 12 or that sort of thing, before they sit for their final exam, a week before, a lot of the students, that is when they were interacting with the lab setting or the lab environment. So that meant that only within a week is when you have touched maybe a burette, or you've touched wires, or you've touched a cell holder, and you have no idea after that how it works. So even when you're being guided through the STEM practical, there's a teacher behind your back, at least trying to make sure you've not broken anything. And you see, the thing about science is you must make a mistake to move to the next level, or it's not a must, but at least you learn a lot from your failures. So what I saw was that confidence was not there. And by digging into my classmates, I found out that a lot of them didn't interact with the lab setting continuously throughout high school. So when we now decided to start Funky Science, it started off like, okay, let's try and talk to scientists our age and tell them about STEM and tell them how cool it is and how interesting it was. But then we realized that they're not listening as much, because even for them, the reason why they're doing a STEM course is because they were forced in. They probably got an A or a B and they were told, I think you should do physics or you should do chemistry and you're good enough to go. Then we decided, let's try and do Funky Science for high school students. But then the other thing with high school students, they've already made up their mind and they're like, science is hard. I don't like chemistry. I don't like bio. I'm just doing this because it's compulsory in my school, which we find a lot in some of our Kenyan schools. So then from there, we decided, let's work with primary school children. So that's between the age of 3 to 13. They've not made up their mind about STEM. Their mind is still fresh, and we can actually start creating that culture of critical thinking and confidence around doing science experiments, and then also asking questions. So we decided, let's work with the young children between the age of 3 to 13. Not that our content does not cut across, we can actually work with older kids, but we wanted to change attitudes, and you start changing attitudes from a younger age. So I hope in that long story, I've answered why we began and why we continue to work with at least younger minds. We still work with high school students, yes, of course, because they do need the lab setting and even some of these interactions. But we also work with younger minds that you know, they're the future, and they're the ones who are going to change how we see science as Africa.
Great, thank you. More questions are coming in now. I've responded to some of them by text, but the ones that apply, Tabot is saying, thank you, Professor TJ, for the wonderful presentation. Please, in your Funke science organization, do you make use of paper models which could easily be created from environmental materials?
So and maybe, I don't know, is it paper in terms of plastic, or is it paper in terms of maybe paper made out of like newspaper, paper mache made out of wood, or do I talk on both?
Yeah, I would say both. I think it's more questions about recyclable materials. That's what I understand from that. How do you utilize resources that's also safe for the environment?
Okay, that's a very good question. Because even a lot of the materials that we use when we're teaching science experiments, and I think you had asked something around this, how do you think outside just using your regular burette and using your regular pipette in the lab? So sometimes and it's not a very accurate use, but even sometimes when we are creating our own sort of testing to do with experiments, use even plastic bottles. So I'll give a scenario where if we're using a plastic bottle to do an experiment around air pressure. So you can use a plastic bottle. I don't know if I have one nearby, but we can use a plastic bottle to create a sensor room for air pressure. And once you do that with a balloon, you're able to do a science experiment using those recyclable materials. The other thing that we use also is like one of the experiments that we did with one of the experiments that we did with paper, where we're making paper poppers to show also around just air pressure. And it's a lot of things around origami, because some people think that, you know, just folding things around is artwork. Yes, it is. But then also it can be used to show different sorts of science experiments. So we do use material like this plastic bottle to do science experiments. And one of the things around it is, like, let's say this to show air pressure, I can put a balloon inside and cover the mouth of the bottle. And then if I blow, the balloon doesn't inflate. Doesn't. But then if I am to poke, I hope you can see, poke a few holes inside. I hope yeah. Poke a few holes. And we're using just a regular plastic bottle to do a science experiment. And then, I don't know if you noticed earlier, the balloon was not blowing up, but now I can actually blow it in. So which shows that now within the balloon, the air pressure inside and outside now has become balanced. So that means I can now blow up the balloon. So you see, we use everyday materials to show concepts around us. And you see, it's just seeing what you have and working with it. So that's what we try as much as possible to do.
Awesome, thank you. Thank you for the new one that was not planned as well.
All is ready.
And thanks to the great team behind that is also as in bringing everything to the table. Rehan has a very interesting question. It reads, for mathematical models, where is it placed along this hands-on experience? So it's more, how do you manage like math-related experiments or things that requires calculation? How do you navigate the work around that for the hands-on experiment?
So, of course, for some of our mathematical experiments, since we're dealing with kids who are still doing very basic introduction, so that's around addition, subtraction, and multiplication, we try as much as possible to use instruments with them, so things. So we'd say we'd play with different balloons, we'd play with different bottles, like let's say conical flasks, add this together and that sort of thing. We've also created math games around multiplication. So my co-founder will really speak to this because he's really helped his daughter understand the math table by a game that they're playing with. I think it's the 9 table. So we create games around that because math is very technical and you have to write it and all that stuff. But we create quizzes around it to bring in the play aspect of doing mathematics. And that's how heavily we keep now trying to get the kids to remember. So I played this game that was linked towards mathematical concept. How else can I break it down to whatever I'm doing in my exam?
Okay, great. Someone is asking to learn more, of course, if they want to find, is there a community? But I just dropped the link to your website. But if you
Yes.
wanted to, how do they learn more about Funky Science?
So they can actually reach out. They can actually also reach out to us directly on the email that we've shared there, ask. And then also to join the community. Actually, when they send a message to the number, because we actually have our WhatsApp community for teachers there, so we can actually add them on board. If they actually want more information on what we do, they can actually just drop us an email, drop us a message, or reach out to us on any of our social media platforms. We'll be sure to get back to them, which
Okay.
are Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, sorry, X, YouTube, and of course TikTok for the Gen Zs.
Okay, great. I'm going to take a bit of a change of course now, and there's a lot of effort. Of course, we know that science is the bedrock of innovation, and just like you said at inception, we need to ensure that students basically come to understand deeply, but also appreciate and develop a love for science. For us to basically have the next generation of innovators that would solve the most pressing challenges that still plagues the continent. But it still feels like while there are lots of efforts, I don't think we are moving at such a pace to basically bring a dent or address this challenge at scale. And it remains, as much as their efforts, what you're doing is amazing. Of course, there are PhET resources, maybe educators as well for different reasons in terms of how they see all of this being used. Where do you see us as educators? What role do we have to play to ensure that we can begin to close that gap where the almost now formed stronghold or not going away perception of without labs, we can't teach or students are not learning effectively. How do we move past that to get into a place? How can we just move to the other side where we, of course, down that hill and then realize, oh, we're on a separate plane. Those ever-present challenges are no more there, and we're trying to there are other issues are the ones we're trying to face as we close the gap.
Okay, cool. So the main thing I can say, as we try to close the gap, there's how do I put it? We all need to work together. So one thing that I keep on saying is that we can't all deliver the same content or the same thing to our students at the same time. We can't all cater for our students, all of us at the same time, but we can work together to give different outcomes towards the moving closer to the bell. So what I have seen and what I think that we could all do together, because what I'm doing is a small thing, but I think we can actually work together and reach a different level where we could actually integrate some of these learning models with each other. So one of the ways I have seen is now, like, for example, I have shared my story with all of you here, and you know now what Funky Science does. And whatever now, as the PhET community you're doing is sharing different practices that have been done and tested in different locations and different areas. And I think even for us as educators, those are some of the things that we can use as our tools, tips and tricks that we can actually use to get ahead. Hello?
No, please go ahead.
Okay, so what we can use as our tips and tricks to get ahead. So like for now, I shared about what we've done and what we are trying to do to reach to the next level. Next session, maybe there could be another educator who shares something similar and we could actually collaborate and work together. So what I think that needs to happen more is more synergies among the teaching community, where we are openly sharing what we've learned and what we are doing. I don't think we're in a competition to teach our children, we're more in a collaboration, because all of these things we must work together. And I heavily always rely on teamwork and working together, because even I haven't reached here without help of educators. Even from some of the content that we're doing, there's always a teacher who's asking us, how do we fix this and make sure that children are actually learning at the end of everything that we're teaching them? So it's just more of making sure that there's always collaboration and always we're working together, because we all have the same goal. And if we work together towards that same goal, we'll reach there faster.
Okay, great. Collaboration is key for us to bridge the gap and then start moving towards ensuring practical STEM learning. It's not just STEM learning the right way is accessible to all learners on the content. In terms of teacher preparation, yeah, please keep the questions coming. Once more questions come in, we'll be happy to get Professor TJ to respond. In terms of teacher preparation, there's the preparing student, but also teachers are like the last in line, basically, of that whole knowledge transfer of preparing students. How can we also upskill teachers at scale to become there's collaboration, but in terms of know-how or whatever is required, I don't want to limit that and say so narrow. How can we prepare teachers at scale as well across the continent to be able to support this drive?
So it's I think it's the always asked question, because even when we run some of our sessions where we're just speaking education, we normally have like our live sessions every last Saturday of the month. And I think the biggest question that has come is, especially since Kenya is transitioning from one curricula to the next, how fast can we train our teachers? Now, a lot of times this is a very tricky question, because even training around teachers is linked towards policy of different countries. So which means that if we are to upskill our teachers faster, then sometimes the pressure is put on them to upskill themselves so that they can get to the same level of our learners. But what I think that we could do as a collaborative effort is even among the teachers themselves, because I know within the PhET community, you have a big group of educators. It's also sharing some of the learnings that you've done as a teacher. You know, when you share some of the tools and tricks that you're using in your classroom, then you're able to also show the students and the learners, this is what I have used, and this is what I've used for my learners, and this is the impact that it's had so far. Because I think even by teachers sharing their stories, and not shying away from sharing their stories, but sharing their stories that have actually changed learning outcomes in their class, it doesn't stop another teacher from picking up that same teaching tool or that same teaching technique and using it in their classroom. And I think that will be a quote unquote shortcut towards maybe upskilling the teachers by the time, you know, if one teacher is supposed to learn a different set of tools from another, then that can be organized, because of course government organizes its sort of teacher training and that sort of thing. But if it's just building around skills around storytelling, running your classroom, then I think as educators and as teachers, we should share that more often, show that this technique worked for me. What if you test it in your classroom? What do you think can happen? And by just having those conversations continuously, who knows? It may not be the holistic in-class or digital training, but it's more of a community-driven training together.
Okay, great. Zach, I don't know if you have thoughts or other questions, but yes, if you have any, just feel free to drop as well, and we'll get to that. Rihad is asking, how far are your activities linked to, so have you made efforts to, like, of course, perhaps with the transition to more competence-based curriculum, are your activities linked to curriculum, or how do you structure it? How do you structure it in a way that it's accessible or useful in a standard school? What are the barriers to that?
Okay, so in terms of accessibility,
curriculum alignment.
Curriculum alignment. Okay, so there are two things about the joy of science. So science principles don't change across curricula. I think that's one thing that we must be aware of. The joy is Newton's law is the same if it's in Kenya or if it's in Nigeria. It's the same across all curricula. The only difference is now the level at which you're teaching the different concepts. And what governs whatever we're doing is that we teach it at the level that it's supposed to be taught. So a lot of our content is actually guided by what is set out by the Kenyan KICD, so the Kenyan Curriculum Curator. So we make sure that we link it with that. In the case where we're dealing with schools that run the international system, we do exactly the same, where we curate it according to that level of what the child is supposed to be learning. So if the child is in grade 3, we create content that is geared towards the child in grade 3. If the child is in year 1, then it's the same thing. So we just make sure that as we are teaching this child, then we're teaching them experiments and activities that are at their level.
Okay, great. Yeah, please keep the questions coming. I have a question. And of course, Funke Science and PhET are partnering to ensure that we can continue to support learners on the continent. And one of the shared goal is to make learning science more like doing STEM.
Yes.
How do we shift attitude or practice in terms of beyond teacher preparation now methods? What you've mentioned play-based during one of the, as in the experiments you made, what practices or methodologies do you highly recommend teachers to adopt in teaching science in their classroom at the moment, to move away from the very traditional fact or lecture-based or rote-based learning? What methods are proven effective to you? And what are the ones you would like, maybe, I don't know, top 100, top 2, top 1? What do you think teachers should increasingly have in their toolkit?
So for me, it's always kinesthetic. So touch, feel, it makes the experience stick more. So the thing about science is if you're just dictated for and told, like let's say, for example, with this experiment, if I just told you about it and said, if you put a balloon inside a plastic bottle, and then if you blow inside, it won't inflate. But if you poke holes around the balloon and then blow the balloon, it'll inflate. So that I think if I just told it to you like that, you'd be left with question marks. And you see, a lot of times on the continent, that's how STEM courses are taught. You're just told this is what happens. Imagine. But you know, sometimes we also need to bring it closer home and use material that are accessible. So you know, it's things that if you can find them daily, just to use to show a concept. Because even sometimes I think sometimes even as a scientist or as educators, sometimes we overcomplicate something when you can actually simplify an experiment to such a point where, like I've taught about taking care of water bodies using a balloon and water. You see, it's things that is everyday life and try and bring it closer home. So I think the more we teach it practically, the more you can see it, touch it, and feel it, then it's more likely to stick with you as the learner. And also for you as the teacher, it becomes a more engaging classroom and the time passes faster.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you. We're fast approaching the end, so we'll be happy to take a few more questions before we close. But while the questions are on the way, technically we've spoken to teachers.
Yes.
We've spoken to teach students to a degree. I'll say policymakers or the regulatory bodies also have an important role to play. They could accelerate or amplify the effort, make an enabling environment. From your viewpoint, what are the things that, as a collective, what do we need to have in place? So okay, I'll ask the question later on, as in second later on. But for policymakers or anyone at that level, what gap do you see, and what do you think is necessary to bridge the gap and ensure all learners have access to effective maths learning as well, and maths and science learning?
So if I understand you correctly, it's around policy or
policy. How can policy? Do you if you had a way to fix anything at that level, are there gaps that you see? And what do we have to, because we have a mixed audience here. What barriers do you see at that level that you think we need to pay attention to?
I think, as I think maybe you had talked about it as well, but I think it's something that needs to be looked into, especially when we talk about, for me, it's strongly on teacher training and development. I think teachers are the gateway to getting into our next generation of learners. And they're the ones who spend majority of the year with our learners. And I think I think policy needs to state as much as possible that our teachers need to be trained as often as possible. And I would be called crazy for this, but I think even it needs to be as close as even weekly we're building capacity where we can even create, it could be an extra holiday for the kids where one Wednesday it's mandatory clubs for the entire country where they're doing that. But it's also building capacity of our teachers, because a lot of times we forget that there are new tools that are coming out every single day about teaching students. There are new studies that are coming out every single day about teaching our students. What are we doing differently to make sure that our teachers are equipped for this next generation of learners? We have a scenario where now teachers are not teachers, children are born with devices in their hands. So when they get to a classroom and the teacher is still is not even linking any of the learning with that, then we're getting lost. We're finding out even scenarios where there are some schools that don't even have access to proper learning material. Even a blackboard is a problem. So I think continuously making sure building their capacity and increasing resources for teachers, if that is made that it's mandatory and it's actually implemented, that for me would be like my silver bullet towards education, because we're all working together.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the presentation. Of course, some of my takeaway from this is, of course, it's important that we support and equip teachers
Yes.
continuously. It's not just the one-off things come up every time, and it's important that we have systems and structures in place that enables teachers to, of course, stay abreast and updated in terms of what is happening. I also understand and learned, like in all of the threads you've said, the bit of collaboration was consistent across all levels, where teachers can collaborate with their peers. It's not competition, it's collaboration.
Yes.
So we can all, just like, of course, PhET as the project and Funke Science is doing, we can collaborate to extend our reach and ensure that all that we have in our toolkit can be put together to ensure that at the end, those we serve, we can constantly reach and ensure that we have, of course, we create the best and the next generation of innovators and scientists on the continent, which is the shared goal at the end of the day. Thank you so much. We've come to the end of today's meeting, and it was a pleasure to have you join us today. I'll give you maybe 30 seconds or thereabout to maybe final words if you have any, before we just take a wind down.
Well, first and foremost, thank you everybody for your kind words on the work that we're doing. And we're very open to working with as many African educators as possible. We are also actively wanting to even get your information and your feedback on the work that we're doing. And also, if you have any feedback to give us, any questions, any comments, reach out to us. I think there was a slide that we had shared previously. Those contacts were not the correct ones. Please look at these ones that are shared. So the number and the website are there for you to link up with us. Other than that, you can also reach out to us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, email, phone call at Funke Science, and we'll always be able to answer all your questions. I love science. I've always loved science like forever, and I love doing all sorts of experiments. And I want as many people to join me in our cause of inspiring the next generation of African scientists. And I'd like to thank the PhET team for becoming our partners as well, working together towards this same goal. And it's good that we have the same goal and seeing how far we can go, because alone as Funke Science, we can't reach as many students as we can, but together with as many educators, collaborators like PhET and organizations that do the similar work, we can get to every single child in Africa and change their mentality around science. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. So we all have a role to play, and we welcome you on board to continue to contribute in the best way that we can. Thank you so much for joining today's edition, or the April edition of the Share and Discuss webinar series. We hope that you found it as fun as we did, and we hope that you join us again next month. Thank you once again, and bye for now. Thanks, Professor TJ, and thanks for the amazing experience. See you around again. Bye, everyone.